Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. Karen Skidmore is a marketing consultant and business advisor with a particular interest in helping midlife women scale their small businesses without burning out. She's also had a lot of reinventions as she has moved through her midlife shifts, and we're going to find out about some of those today. So welcome, Karen. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great to be here after hearing many of your podcast episodes. It's lovely to be on the other end, so thank you.
Oh, it's very nice, actually. And increasingly, I'm finding that people I'm interviewing, they have been listening to the podcast, which is always a good sign, I find. Always
Yes.
a good sign. So you successfully made the transition from working in a corporate world to building your own business. So why did you do that, and how did you make it work?
Yeah, I think like many women of the age that I was when I did it was because of children. So I had two young children, went back to work after both of them, slightly longer maternity leave after the second one. But I was convinced by my employers, by my husband. They just felt, and also as well in my heart, I knew I was never going to be a stay-at-home mum. I always knew I always wanted to work. But went back, and it worked for a while, but it was when they started to get older. I had a particular boss who just used to talk to me about part-time. Oh, and on your days off. And it just triggered me. I was like, it's not my day. I don't get freaking paid for that day. I work part-time. So there was always this sort of bit of a clash between, when I'm on my days off. So I knew it wasn't really going to work long term. And it was when my daughter was going to start school, when they're in nursery. They can be in nursery 51 and a half weeks of the year if you're excluding Christmas time. But when they start school, there's considerably less childcare hours. And between me and my husband, we just thought, well, we can't afford a nanny. I don't want to live in au pair. I don't want to be dealing with all of that. It's ridiculous. So I made the decision, and my husband backed me up, that I was going to leave. And I was looking at other part-time jobs that would give me more flexibility around school hours. And frankly, the only jobs I could see was working in libraries or school assistant. So really the only option for me back then was to start my own business. So I was investigating all sorts of different things. I found myself into life coaching. That's what got me out of corporate life. And it was we're talking 2002, 2003 when I started my training, where actually life coaching in the UK was, in fact, somebody at work even was quite surprised that I was choosing a career that I was going to be in a swimming costume all my time. And he thought I was retraining to be a lifeguard. I was just quite shocked with that. So life coaching back then was an American thing. It was unheard of. So I trained to be a life coach, became accredited. And then I did what I always advise my clients not to do, was just to go, oh, sod it. I'm just leaving with nothing. I was so waiting to go. So I left, did my notice, and started my first life coaching business on the day my daughter started school. So my first few years was working around my children's school days, nursery hours, building a life coaching business around. I was going to do confidence for women, which didn't go down terribly well because it's a rubbish thing to try and market, because women don't buy confidence. They just don't. It took me a few months to learn that. And then I got into really understanding how the nuts and bolts of my business worked. And it was after a while going, people were starting to come to me wanting help with their marketing back then. How did I start my email newsletter? I was one of the first coaches in the UK to be blogging. back then when people thought it was a disease of some kind. And it's like, no, this is a way to promote your business. So we're going back a long time now. But that's what got me out. So I was just so frustrated by what was available for me back then as a career, as a woman wanting to be a mum. And I just thought the only way to do it was to go and work for myself. And I haven't looked back since.
I think you were really ahead of the curve, because I realized that you actually, you stopped doing things like your online programs and your membership site when I was just getting started with mine, when I was just getting onto the bandwagon of the online business thing. 2015, that was exactly when I started. And you, by that stage, you'd already like, I've had enough of this.
I don't know if it's burnt out with that. Can't do that anymore. No, it is really interesting, because I've always looked, and I say head of the curve, not in a arrogant way. That's just how my brain works. I've always been able to, I saw social media and Twitter and Facebook. So I was teaching back in the days where you could teach social media as a whole, and then recognizing that actually you can't just teach social media anymore, because you have to teach Twitter, you have to teach Facebook. And I thought, I don't want to be a specialized. So I got out of it then as well. And again, I've got a rebel streak in me as well. So as soon as everything becomes trendy or on trend, I don't want to do it anymore. I want to go and do this now. So it is a little bit of how I'm genetically made up. But yes, it was back in the days where networking, I started a women's networking group, because the only networking was local chambers or IOD. And it was literally middle-aged white men in grey suits. And I'd go there and I go, this is, I can't do this. This is just not comfortable for me. I don't enjoy this. So I started up a women's networking group, again, back before women's networking was a thing. So that's one of the things that really got me going in my business, I have to say, was leading those events, because it just threw me into meeting all sorts of interesting people. It was just brilliant. Those early days of business. It was lovely. The naivety, beautiful naivety that you feel in the first few years of business.
But, many women like you, they step back, either, when it's family that's getting in the way, or increasingly, I think in midlife, when we've had enough, really, and it's no longer working for our values,
Yes.
Or it's just too much, and it's just we're heading to burnout, and we pull back, or we step out, we do something else, but then we often get stuck. I got rather stuck. I did it. I stepped away, I think, when I was 41, and then I kind of drifted. So how did you make this work for you as the kids got older, and you could potentially pull back a little bit, although not emotionally, because we know that older kids actually need us more than younger kids, but perhaps not so much in the time perspective. So how did you make this work for you on an ongoing basis, and with the different transitions that you've gone through?
I've certainly, it is interesting this they're talking about this, because I've not really thought about it until you asked me these questions. But my business definitely evolved as my kids got older and needed different things from me. So when they were smaller, and it was literally a case of, depositing them up at various school times and feeding them, and they were tucked up in bed asleep by 6:30. I used to,
lovely
I
days.
know those days, and I used to do two shifts. So I used to do the literally almost like 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then mum in the afternoon, kids to bed, have meal, and then I'd be back up in the office again from 7 o'clock. And I used to do evening tele seminars. God, those were the days. And I used to coach in the evening. So I used to have clients in the evening and a few hours in the morning. And then as that started to change, it was literally as they was getting up later and they weren't going to bed until about 7:30, for me to then start coaching or working at 8 o'clock, I was exhausted. So that's when it had to have a big shift. So I started to do much more daytime stuff, and my days got longer. So I was able to run workshops. I was able to do more things in the time during the day, because I wasn't suddenly condensed into, I was suddenly, rather than having just 2 hours of work time during the day, I was having 9:30 to 2:30. So I could start doing in-person events and start running marketing workshops. And it's as they started to get older, and you're right, as you think that the older they get, the less they need of you. But, my experience is they don't want you around, but they certainly want to know that it's all the after school clubs and then the pickups. And suddenly my daughter got into netball and there was all the cricket training and, oh my goodness me, so much running around. So actually moving more into the online business then started to suit me better, because I was able to do business in between all the other stuff. And I didn't have to be running a workshop in Guildford and having to dash out the door to do the next thing for the family. So it's certainly evolved. And I do have a real low boredom threshold. I get bored incredibly easy. So for me, making these shifts, I have to do it to keep being interested in my business. I have to keep reinventing myself and moving into different areas. Otherwise, I get bored. And when you get bored, and you know this from running your own business, if you get bored with your clients, it doesn't work. It's, your clients are going to sense it. You don't put the enthusiasm into your marketing. So it was something I recognized in myself, that I had to trick myself into keep being interested. I keep looking, keep searching, keep thinking, well, what's not necessarily what the next thing every single month, but certainly over every sort of 2 or 3 years, there was a definitely significant shift in what I was delivering. And also as well, business moved on. We got into the, so you said 2014, 2015, you started your first membership site. And I think that's where
no, that was when it was a long time till I started the membership site, actually. So it's 3 years ago now.
Okay.
But 2015 was when I first started exploring online business. Yeah, I started to do the courses and things like that to sort of see
and
what was
that's where
around.
the birth of the do you remember the internet bros and all the digital marketers? There was a huge there was a plethora of 20 somethings, often from West Coast America, selling how to get your tripwires put into your funnels and all of that. And I got really geeky. So again, I'm a mechanic genetically. So when I look at personality profiles, I'm very mechanical based. I like my systems and processes. So I got really loved all the building campaigns and funnels, and actually did a period of time of doing some proper marketing consultant, actually working for other small businesses, setting up their marketing campaigns. But that didn't last very long, because after a while I was like going, okay, well, I've learned how to do it now. I don't want to have to, that's just selling my time for money. But it was a good 2 or 3 years of really getting quite geeky about those systems. So yeah, that 2015, 2017 was a huge birth of online marketing, digital marketing, funnel campaign building. And then moved on from there. So it has really shifted with my children getting older, following the patterns of how business cycles and how rapidly it went through that 2012 to 2018, 2019. And of course, this last 12 months of everything going virtual. Much overused word, but the pivoting that's gone on to recognize how easy the things that we can do with our businesses now over the internet is just incredible, with things that we didn't imagine.
Remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, today, actually, I had to postpone it because we were having some work done in the garden, but I was having a photo shoot today. I've put it back another couple of weeks virtually.
Really? I was wondering whether to explore one of those.
I mean, I've seen the results from several of good friends of mine, and they look amazing. I mean, they're yeah. So the things that we can do now in businesses are virtual photo shoots.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. I've just booked a magician for my son's birthday. He's 19, by the way. I have to say, he's not little, but I didn't watch it. But we're joining a Zoom magician session on his birthday in a couple of weeks. It's like, what? So it's great. I'm really excited about all the potential we've got for business opportunities over the coming years now.
And it makes it all so much more global, doesn't it? One of my guests just a short while ago who's been published, Makeda, who's a 60-year-old pole dancer in Los Angeles, and she can now attend classes online, her erotic dancing, not so much the pole, because everybody's got to have a pole if you're doing the pole, but she can do her erotic dance lessons. She can attend other people's anywhere. And she's also now finally going to embrace doing them virtually herself, which will broaden out her audience exponentially. It means I can participate in her erotic dance class in Los Angeles if I want to do that. I mean, that is just amazing.
Yeah.
And big companies, I find, I was talking to some people just literally yesterday, and they were talking about they're a huge, big business and big US, big UK, and they've actually come together more now. They're not working, as two businesses, they're working together because they've had to. That's, what is it? The mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
I keep coming up with that one. I keep repeating that one on the podcast. But it is. We've had to be creative about things. And because of Zoom, people are now seeing each other, and maybe they would never have seen each other before because, there wasn't a budget for them to fly across the pond. But now they can see each other over Zoom. Yeah, it is quite remarkable.
And I think, as midlife women and midlife men, we do have this opportunity to reinvent ourselves, because we have to when we go through midlife, don't we? I mean, this is it. It's like if we try and still be the person that we were in our 30s. And that was the problem I had shifting into my 40s. I was this very strong competitive streak in me, feeling I was, out, running and doing all the things that I felt I was invincible. And then bringing that into my 40s, that clashed with my change of hormones and my body changes. And we have to learn to slow down as we get older, but that doesn't mean we have to slow down tortoise speed. We just have to do the shifts. So I do think it's very interesting. I have found midlife to be an incredibly exciting point of my life, where actually, and we've had this conversation before, haven't we, about this midlife crisis that the media love to label it on and say, God, you get to midlife and your life's over and you have no idea what to do and it's really frustrating. It creates the opportunities. So I've really embraced this opportunity of being able to go bring on the 50s. I'm 51 now and I can't wait for this decade. Whereas back in my 30s, I was going, oh God, you're over the hill by the time you're 50. Life's over. So it's just starting to begin.
Well, that was how I first came across you, was your wonderful Embrace event that you did earlier last year.
Yes.
And that was exactly about that. It was about embracing it, which we're completely on the same wavelength for that. But there's just no point in fighting it. I mean, what's the point? And it is a very exciting time, I think. And the more we embrace it, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to be doing your Embrace event again, aren't you? Give you a little plug for the listeners to watch out for it.
The more times I say it, the more times it's going to happen, because it's
going to happen. Yes,
accountability. But yes,
and now it's on the podcast. It'll have
now
to
it's in the
happen
podcast. Embrace 2.0. We did it around Menopause Awareness Day. 2020. And it just felt like there was a huge wave. I mean, now I think it's a bit like when you buy a red car or you see red cars on the road. Now I've dipped my toe in the water of the menopause world. Now all around me, I see menopause experts. They're just popping up like daisies, which is brilliant, which I have to say is absolutely incredible. But there's just so many now. I'm just seeing them everywhere, which is big thumbs up.
I think it's because you are in the menopause bubble. I'm hoping that, because I keep saying, I'm sure people are bored silly of me talking about menopause, but then I realise it's only me that's talking about menopause all the time, and midlife and transformation. Most of the world isn't doing that. So hopefully it's not just an echo chamber that, we are sitting in a little echo chamber, but hopefully other people will be hearing him for the first time, or maybe the second time, but not the 10th time. So be all right.
Yes. But Embrace 2.0 is going to happen October 2021. You never know, it might even be in person. Who knows? I'd love to have a proper festival in a wood somewhere. That's my little fantasy about it, actually getting together.
We can all be in socially distanced tents, possibly.
Yes, might not be October, it might be virtual this year, and then we'll go for a nice summer month for an in-person proper fireside gatherings.
How big's your garden? We can come and camp in your garden.
Oh no, it's going to be bigger. I'm talking big festival.
Big festival.
So yes, anybody wants out there listening to this who wants to sponsor an event like this, please talk to me. Yeah, I think it's needed.
Okay, so you took a bit of a detour recently when you wrote a book called True Profit Business, about changing the way that we do business and stopping burnout. So what
Yeah.
prompted you to write the book? Was it because you burnt out? Or
Yeah.
you saw lots of women burning out?
Both. Yeah, I mean, my burnout, I hit the proverbial wall when I was 42. Anybody who's gone through this, and the more people I speak to, there's always been a trigger moment. And mine was losing my dad to cancer. He died of leukemia when I was 40. And on the surface of it, we all dealt with it really well. We're a very practical family. And I just didn't deal with the grief. I got on with it. I had 2 young children. They were, what were they, 4 and 6 at the time. I was trying to loosely run my business around it, and I just zipped everything up. So I did the classic, okay, funeral's over, get back into life. Oh yes, and we had a dog at the time who then managed to get run over and hit by a lorry. And if anybody knows of the vet on Channel 4, what's his name, who puts dogs back together again, he went along and we spent the insurance company spent £6,500 on putting him back together again. So on top of that, that was my, I look back on it, was a black comedy of situation. There was me completely, just starting to get back into life again, and then our dog of 9 months, I was having to pick him up. He was in a harness on crate rest, and I was picking him up and literally carrying this 25-kilo dog out of the garden to pee on the lawn and bring him back in again for about 2 or 3 months. So my shoulders went, my back went. I mean, I was in bits. I mean, I literally lost it. How my husband didn't divorce me at the time. Geez. So that really, and I decided I can't do this. I've got a business to get back into. I've got a family to look after. I've got things to get on with. So I zipped all my grief up and got on with life. And for anybody who's gone through that will know, well, the grief has got to come out somewhere. So it came out in a bit of a volcanic eruption, and it was the summer of the Olympics, and I remember it so well because we all had tickets to go and see some various events, and I had to stay in bed, let my family go off and leave me, and sitting there googling what's adrenal fatigue, what's going on. So it was a whole cauldron of menopausal, perimenopausal, and everything. It just had to recover from it. So the business, and coming back to my book, True Profit Business, that's when I started to recognize that the way I was working was not helping me in my recovery. I'd launched a membership site. I'd just written a book, Shiny, How Not to Be a Social Media Magpie, the year before. And on the outside, everything looked like it was all going great. On the inside, I was just absolutely knackered. I was fatigued beyond. And so I knew that, yes, I could do all the things to help me recover. I could start, looking at what I was eating, and I could change what I was doing, exercise. But if I wasn't changing the way my business was supporting me, then my business was always going to be the thing that was holding me back, because I love business. I love working. So I started to re-engineer what I was doing to try and work out what kind of business model could support my health and well-being. And that's when I went on a journey of trying out some VIP. So I did some high level, working with clients, as I said, about marketing consultancy. I think £15,000 was the most I sold of this consultancy package to redo, and I tried that out, and it was okay. And then I was trying out some online courses that launch energy does not serve me. It serves some people, but launching is not my bag, and I learned that as well. So I ended up trying, it was like for about 4 or 5 years, trying out lots of different dresses, different styles, trying out different business models, selling time for money in groups online. And I was able to work out what kind of business models suited me. And then that led me on a journey of working with clients who then go, well, what kind of business model is going to suit me, Karen? So it was then starting to look at what I call true profit business. And true profit business really came from understanding that, and how I see business is there's three energies. There's the energy of money, there's the energy of creativity, and the energy of impact. And these three energies, we have to have all three energies within our business for it to work for us. If we don't have these energies, what happens is the business is running us. We've got a job. We might be making good money, but we might be lacking that purpose. And in fact, we've got one of our Momentum members right now, exactly at that moment of building up a business. She's taken on her first employee. A pipeline is solid for the next 3 or 4 months. And she's just had this, why am I doing this? Hang on a minute. And she had not forgotten, but she's been so busy that she hadn't put the time and attention on looking at where her impact energy was. So the impact energy is all about making a difference, serving, supporting causes. What is it that if you weren't being paid any money, what you would still deliver, what contribution, legacy, if you like, that you want to contribute? And then there's this lovely energy that is so forgotten in the entrepreneurial marketplace, is the energy of creativity, is doing stuff that we love. And it's doing stuff that serves our personality type, where we are in our midlife shifts. So if we are feeling a little bit perimenopausal and we're not feeling it, then recognizing that the business has to maybe change slightly to allow us to have more time to rest and to recover. So going into online launch programs, for example, when you're going through the menopause, I can tell you right now, it's never going to work because your adrenal fatigue, your cortisol levels, you can't cope with the stress of a launch. So it's really interesting when we start looking at those three energies of money, time and actually income that you get from the business, creativity, and your impact energy, is how well balanced they are. If you think of them as like a little Venn diagram, that bit in the middle when they overlap, that's your true profit. So where you get the right amount of time that you are working in the business, the right amount of money that you want, the right of having it, there's that source of creativity that you're being fueled, you're enjoying creating content, and you're enjoying doing the marketing that it doesn't feel like marketing, because it's just, you just get up in the morning and do it rather than trying to fight it. And then there's that impact energy. When they all overlap, that's where your true profit is. That's where business is designed to work for you. And it means that you can be then the best possible version of yourself. You can be completely in flow, and you're not fighting every step of the way. So it's making sure you've got the right systems in place, the right processes to support you, the right people, the right team. So whether it's just going to be you and a VA, or you and maybe a team of associates to support, if you want to be more of the CEO of the business and not doing too much delivering. And it's making sure that you've got the right health and well-being. And so it's really interesting when the people that we work with now, we take them through what I call the Grow Strong planning process. And in that Grow Strong planning process, yes, there's marketing strategy. Yes, there's visibility and all the things that you expect out of a business growth plan. But the foundation of it is the health and well-being, and where they are planning in their movement, their exercise, what they're fueling themselves with, and what fun they're having. And that is the bedrock to it. And if that isn't there, then whatever you're building on top, you could do it for a maybe short time, maybe for a few years. But if your health and well-being isn't integrated into your strategy of what it is that you're doing, whether that's your own business or your career, it doesn't matter whether you can apply these principles as an employee as well. If your health and well-being isn't integral to your work, you're building a house on sand. It's going to crumble at some point. So this health and well-being is just so important, particularly when we're in our 40s and 50s and beyond, as we're having to support the way that our bodies are changing. We're not 20-somethings anymore that we can live off Kentucky Fried Chicken and a ton of biscuits and lots of tea and coffee. You can get away with that when you're 25, can't you? Not so much when you're 45, 55. So true profit business was a labor of blood, sweat and tears, but it's a really practical. There's a chapter in there about energy flow as well, and bringing in, recognizing where we have to lean in and lean out. and think about the ebb and flow of how we manage our energy with our business, as well as very practical, looking at that pillar, that planning process, and looking at the business models. So yeah, I'm really proud of that book. Actually, it's been out for it'll be 2 years it'll be 2 years September. It's really practical, but I've been told people who've read it have just gone, geez, it's just flipped all my thinking about business 180 degrees. So yeah, it's a great book that I put together, but it was 3 years in the writing.
Was it? Oh my
Oh
goodness.
yes, because it was very much of my journey, and I didn't want to put anything in the book that was just theory. It was stuff that had worked for me and that was working for my clients, and I wanted to put a methodology behind it, so it's very process driven, so somebody can work through it and go, right, these are the 5 pillars. I need to make sure I've got my systems and processes in place, my people, my power, my health and well-being, where the planning and where the purpose is. And it gives you that way of being able to break it down rather than just lots of nice inspirational words to read. It's got that practical process behind it.
But what you're talking about, the themes you're talking about, are very much applicable to life, not just to business, aren't they? And particularly midlife, I think, which is why setting up our own business, if we can in midlife, can be so fulfilling, because it gives us that flexibility, but it also allows us to be authentically us and to live a life that is creating, hopefully, not that the aspiration is wealth, but is providing a living for us, doing something that we love to do. But
Yes.
before I ask you about the systems and processes, I just wanted to explain to my listeners who are not in the online business world what launching is, because I know exactly what you mean by launching, but what does it mean? We're a rocket taking off? No, we're not a rocket taking off. But in online business world, and correct me if I get this wrong or if I get a bit stuck in the weeds trying to explain it, but so much of the time we're selling our personal services online, or we're selling courses, or we're selling memberships. And what many of us have been taught to do is to follow this launch model, whereby we give out a ton of free content, whether that be webinars or a challenge or something, and you build up a lot of momentum by doing this over a short period of time, and then you have a deadline, and if you don't buy by the deadline, then you lose it and you miss out until the next time that it's open. And there's a lot of kind of fear of missing out in there, and there's, as you say, there's a lot of pressure on the person doing the launch to feed that machine in a way. And I'm like you, I tried it. I know, I listened to the courses, I did the work, I tried it, and I just thought, no, this doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. And then you also said you said VA, so that is a virtual assistant.
Thank you.
So a virtual assistant. Again, when we're in the online world, our assistants can be online as well. And I have a most wonderful virtual assistant. I'm going to give her a name check. Hazel. Hello, Hazel. You are just utterly wonderful. She'll be listening to this later. But that's what VA means. So I just thought I'd explain that before we go on. But now I would love, that's right, I'd love to talk about some of those systems and processes that we can apply to life just as much as we can apply to business, because what you're describing, to me just sounds like a life lived well, as opposed to a life that we're perhaps just existing in.
Yeah, and actually it is. I mean, my strapline now, it became at the end of last year, is business, life and leadership, because I recognize that even though if you put me in a box, I'd probably be labeled as a business coach. But so much of the work I do is around how we live our lives, because we can't separate whether you run your own business or you work in the community. It might be an unpaid role. Whatever you're doing when you're not at home, just being you and enjoying leisure time, there is this moment where it's very difficult to separate who we are without what our function is in society, if you like. And recognizing that And it is really interesting because I'm hesitating here, because this is not about getting the most out of every day. You've got 24 hours a day, and let's get up at 4 a.m. and we start a day with, heavy half hour of meditation. It's not that. I tried that. Miracle morning, was it called? I can't remember. Get up in the morning and make
That
the most of
sounds
that first
so
thing.
intense, doesn't it? The miracle
God, it's so
morning.
intense.
I've never embraced that. No.
It is. I mean, yeah. Well, that's another conversation, isn't it? But this is not about making the most of every day and pumping everything out of every hour. However, the other side of that coin is that we only have a limited time on this earth. So where we get to our midlife, and I think this is obviously where we do see the label of midlife crisis, is that moment of going, shit, half my life might be over.
I better get my skates on.
Because I think, again, this is where I do believe midlife gives us a gentle rocket up our backside to make us realize that if we, and actually, I said this to you before, haven't I? I said, I've decided I'm going to live to 100, but I'm not intending to work for the next 50 years. There's going to come a point where I think by the time I'm 80 or 90, I'm not going to be even going half the pace I'm at the moment. So if I work backwards, I've probably got about another 15, 20 years of wanting to, work 4 or 5 days a week. So I'm now definitely on the other side of how much time I've got on this planet to make the impact that I want to make with the work that I do, what legacy I want to make through. So this isn't about sort of like pumping every single minute out of every single hour out of every single day, but we do need to just have that sanity check. And I think this is this balance of our head and our heart. So our heart, do what we love to do, absolutely. But if we just float around, it's very easy just to be that sort of like away with the fairies and butterfly flip from one thing to another. And that is an important space to have during our year. But if we spend every year doing that, and we then, we're there in our proverbial rocking chair at 85 going, have I had a good life? Have I done what I wanted to do? If you haven't done it by then, it's unlikely that it's going to happen, because we're nearing the end of our lives. So this is it. It's a very sort of gentle way of saying this is not about, going out there and achieve. But if there are dreams and passions and, when I have this, I want to be able to do that kind of conversations, and you haven't started to think about those things, this is the time of our lives to go, well, what can we do to support ourselves? And this is where systems and processes are that container for that ethereal dream, vision making potential. So this is where that, as I said, that head and heart, the heart, which is all, our intuition, our feeling, our beingness. But if we don't have the doingness to support it, it's never going to take form. So this is where systems and processes so people that just go, yeah, but I don't want to have a routine. If we don't have some kind of routine, time just runs away with ourselves. And it's this balance between doingness and beingness that allows us to support that we can get to the end of our lives and go, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how my life has gone. Thank you very much. So systems and processes to me, and I appreciate that I am wired that way. So for me, it's just how I think. And I know I'm a very small percentage of the population. Not everybody thinks like me.
Oh, surely not.
No,
surely
not. I think if everybody thought like me, geez, God, I pity the world. I do think I'm sort of, it's just I'm so head driven, which again is one of my downsides. I have to rebalance all the time. But putting in systems and processes, once we start to embrace them and start to recognize they can serve us, they're not restricting us, they're not making us feel that we're going to be a failure if we don't achieve. If we see them almost like as a trampoline, to enjoy a trampoline, we are much better having one of those mesh tents around the trampoline to stop us from falling off and breaking our legs. Yeah. If we didn't have the mesh tent, we would probably injure ourselves quite badly. But by having
that's a good idea.
but having the mesh around it means that you can do the double flips and do all sorts of different crazy things and be that creative magicness of life. But it's the mesh around us that gives us the container to allow us to put into form, to actually achieve and do the things that really matter to us and make the change that really happens so much when we get to our midlives and we want to make an impact. We want to make a significant change on the world around us.
So what does that look like day to day?
Day to day, it's partly having a routine that's going to support you. So if it's thinking about, and this is, and I say I'm not a productivity expert, but it comes into the conversations that we do have with our clients, is creating a rhythm of how you want to work your week and how you want to live your life. So if we take, give me an example, Rachel, what comes up? Should we talk about writing a book, for example? That might
Yes,
that
I could do with a bit. I could do with a bit
Right.
of free consultancy on that. I tell you.
Because writing a book, I wanted to pick something that isn't necessarily just business owner stuff, because this is for everybody. It might be a fiction book, it might be a how-to book, it might be a book about the history of your local community. Writing a book, I think, is a really great example of when we get to a point in our lives. I haven't met anybody that hasn't said to me, really, oh, I've never thought about writing a book. It's one of those things, isn't it? About, oh, I'd love to write a book. It's just, it's exciting. It's bring to form. And having written 2 books of my own, it's like, geez, it's a real sense of achievement. So the number of people that say they want to write a book compared with the number of people that end up writing a book, I don't know what the statistics are, but I bet you bottom dollar it's probably 90% in favor of people who say they want to write a book and 10%, probably even less, that actually go ahead and do it. So if we take this writing of a book, it's a nice idea, but to be able to then start putting it into form, there has to be some kind of discipline in place that we need to sit down and write the damn thing. So if I think of Stephen King, it was a big inspiration for me. Oh, excuse me. He wrote a really good book about writing. I can't remember what it's called, but if you looked it up, Stephen
How to
King.
write? I've got it on my
How
shelf.
to write. Yeah. So
How to
really,
write.
yeah. And I always remember that is such a great book to read if anybody is actually thinking, God, my God, I do want to write a book. How do I do this?
No, on writing.
On writing. It
I've
is.
just checked.
Yeah, because I loved him. I was a Stephen King buff when I was a teenager. I loved all the horror films. I loved it. But the big message I got from reading that book is that if you want to write a book, you have to write. And he was, considering how many books he's written, his discipline is he will sit down and he will write. And I think it was an hour every day. And it didn't matter whether he wrote 1 word or 1,000 words, he showed up and wrote. And so that's the discipline of systems and processes, is creating a rhythm, a routine of making sure that if something really matters to you, you have to put something into place, a discipline, a process. And there's all sorts of them. We can talk about productivity apps and automation and all of that. And you can get a bit carried away with all the tech to support you. But ultimately, it comes to what is it matters to you? What do you want to make sure that you need to do on a regular basis, whether that's daily, weekly, once a month? It really depends on what's important to you. But then having those, having something in place to be able to support you to get that rhythm. So I think does that answer that question?
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, it's very good. So
We don't have it. It doesn't ever get done, and then it just becomes a thought. It just becomes a conversation you have with your friends that never ever ends up happening.
Yeah, and it's very easy to let busyness instead of business get in the way of actually doing the big stuff, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, because we're human beings. We're designed to be more being, and we're designed to, we don't wake up one morning and become motivated and stay motivated. It just doesn't happen. Emotions, they get in the way. We feel really rubbish one day. We feel sad. Our emotions change, sometimes like the wind every hour. So we're emotional beings, and we have to have some kind of those systems and processes to support us. And you come on a real practical level of like feeding the family, not being able to go to the supermarket as easily as we have been before COVID. So I got into that system of booking a Ocado delivery every 6 days. It's now ingrained. My family knows so that's another example, practical way of putting a system in place. And a number of people, oh God, I never got round to booking a delivery. Well, book one 3 weeks in advance when they are free, and then you just book it, and then it's in the diary and it's done. And then I get food in the fridge, and I don't have to worry so much about I've got nothing to cook for dinner tonight, because it just happens.
Can you come and organise my house, please? Could you come and do my podcast production process?
No.
Actually, I'm getting better at that. That is
Yes,
getting
outsource it.
yeah, I'm getting that tied down. It's a lot better. But as well as us being emotional animals, I know that you're very big on our cycles and how we can factor in our cycles. And I've been postmenopause for a very long time now, so
Yes.
I never really noticed. I had really bad PMT, that much I do remember, but I never. You've talked about feeling energy ebbing and flowing across the menstrual cycle, and I never really noticed that. But then I didn't notice I'd gone through early menopause either until I had a hormone test, so I wasn't very in tune with my body. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I know you're very passionate about that. And I also know you recently said that you were missing your cycles, and I thought, blimey, I would never miss my cycles. Like, done with that, thank you very much.
Well, I thought I was going to be like that. Yeah. So where am I? I'm 51. I have not had a menstrual cycle, a proper menstrual cycle, for about 4 or 5 months. And the reason I missed them is that I used to be a regular 28-day cycle girl. And they helped me understood where my emotions were. So there's nothing more irritating, is there, when you say PMT, and your partner or whoever you were with at the time just goes, "Oh, you must be on your period. Are you being, oh, and you never ever say that, do you?" So the important thing is having that awareness ourselves. So when I was, and I've always tracked my menstrual cycle. So even when I was at school, so talk about being ahead of the curve. I used to do this when I first started my cycle. I used to put a little dot when I started and then an open circle when I'd finished. And I used to.
Did somebody tell you to do that?
No.
You just did it.
I just
off
did
your
it.
own bat.
Yes.
Oh my word.
Yeah. Well, because I didn't want to. So for swimming, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't. So it was things like.
So there was a reason.
Yeah, there was a reason. So because we had our swimming lessons, and I wanted to know if I was going to be on, and holidays, because I remember I've got 2 younger brothers, and the thought of wearing a sanitary towel with a bikini was the worst thing, because I couldn't wear tampons when I was. Anyway, TMI. But that. So I started doing it intuitively, because we didn't have that back then. We're talking about 1985, 86, 87. So I've always on and off measured it and also just tracked it. And then it was really then my work then of going through True Profit Business and understanding the cyclical flow of business, and recognizing that we have different energies and different creative energies as we go through our menstrual cycle. So if you are still menstruating, the first thing to do is start tracking your cycle. So day 1 of bleed. And actually, there's a really great book I highly recommend, Wild Power. I can't remember the name of the authors, but they are they run.
Somebody else recommended.
Yeah,
that as well.
I mean, they are amazing. These 2 women that have been teaching about menstrual cycle power for many, many years now. And it's just incredible stuff that they share. So that you go and read that book. It will just, if you didn't realize what was going on with your energy and creativity throughout your cycle, it's
too late now. I've missed out on that.
No, there's still things, because actually it's about becoming intuitive with your body. So I'm in that transition. Okay, so I haven't gone out the other side yet, but I have heard, and this is what women who tell me who are postmenopausal, when they don't have a cycle, when they're tuning into the body, there's still it's not as that sharp up and down of the cycles. It's much more balanced, but there is still, from what women have told me, it's more like a quarterly. It's more like, if you tune into what happens with the moons, so the moon cycle. So what I do now is, because I don't have a period to track, I don't have a 28-day cycle, I track where I am against the full moon and the new moon. So we're recording this beginning of March. There was a really big, quite bright, heavy moon.
Snow moon.
And oh my goodness me, I was in bits on Thursday, right? And I was just, and so my family take the mick out of me. Oh, it's a full moon, I'm feeling well. But there's no doubt that the moon cycle does affect me. Oh, excuse me. So actually recognizing what's happened to your body, and I think it is when you start to become more in tune with the subtleties of what's going on, you can start to experience them more. And what's great is that when you can start, and it's not something that it's called practice. If you think of yoga, they call it practice for a reason. You practice it. You show up on the mat and you practice your yoga. And it's the same thing with seeing what's happening with your cycles. And this is what's the wonderful thing about being a woman, is that we are so cyclical and up and down and all over the place. It's seen as a very negative thing, particularly in the world of work and productivity. Oh my God, women are all up and down, and you think of the number of women who haven't been put forward for leadership posts. Think of the thing that's happened with the Olympic board out in Tokyo, for example. And have you seen that about women on don't put women up? It's fascinating. I think the guy has now stepped down. So actually, it's seen as a very negative thing in the world of business, but actually it's an incredibly powerful thing. So once we start to see it and we start to become more in tune with how we do ebb and flow through our cycles, it is a powerful thing, because we know when we are feeling more powerful, which is usually around the ovulation, it's usually around the new moon. So if you're looking at the moon cycles, new moon, new beginnings, there's a real power. There's a very spring summer energy where they think of the seasons as we go through. Here in the UK, we're very, very season orientated. We know the seasons that we're in. Spring, summer, there's creativity, things are busting out. Whereas when we come to have our period start, we look at the full moon energy, we're retreating. It's very autumn, winter energy. So it doesn't mean that we just don't do anything, because the winter energy, there's still a hell of a lot happens. So even though the leaves fall off the tree, nothing looks like it's happening. Actually, that's a very powerful part. But nature's retreating. So our period is starting to build up, and it's what's happening at the end of the period, but there's still a hell of a lot going on in our bodies. So it's still a very powerful energy, but it's very much of a retreating. We can go within. It's often where you can do a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, a lot of introspective, creative work. It's a great energy for, as I say, dreaming, visioning, planning, thinking about what's going on. When you come into your spring summer energy, when you're in that ovulation, that new moon, that's time for doing action. That's often the time when you're at a party and you're just going, oh, I am just on it. It's often when you're ovulating. Yeah. So when you start to tune into it and you start to practice and start to track, it becomes incredibly powerful that we can ebb and flow. We can go in and come out. We can start to recognize and make full use. It's like being on the motorway and tuning in where your gears are in the car. If you want to suddenly accelerate and take over, you drop down a gear, you put the energy up. You've got that, not necessarily control, but you can feel that energy that you can lock into. Oh, the car's not going fast enough. I can't overtake. I'm just going to stay here behind this car because it doesn't feel safe at the moment. Yeah, it just allows you to make those decisions when you can push through, lean in, or you need to lean back and actually just rest, because actually that's what your body's telling you. So it's really fascinating. And for those of you who want to read more, Wild Power, as I've mentioned already. And I have started a program called Ebb and Flow. I did it the first time last year, and it was such good fun to run. I shall run it again this year. And it's relating to productivity. So it's looking at how we can plan our week, plan our month, in where we are creatively and where we are in our cycle. If we're not menstruating, we can use the moon to help balance and start to track where we might be picking up on our different seasonal energies.
I've got to share that last Friday, which was the day of the full snow moon.
Yes.
I had a horrible day. I had arguments with 3 of the men in my life.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very stressful day. And I very, very rarely share about it on social media. And I shared about it on social media in my private group, although I've now said it on the podcast. What on earth am I doing? And like, Rachel, for heaven's sake. So anyway, I shared about it in my group. And one of the group members said, oh, it was a new moon. That's what was going on. I was like, what? What are you talking about? So there's me, go straight off to the App Store, download a moon phase app. And now I will do as you do.
There you go.
And I will start tracking it. Oh my goodness, you have it on your watch.
So this is my Apple Watch, and there's a moon on a moon dial, so I can see exactly where the moon is. I have a moon clock as well. So my moon
So I've
clock.
got to get myself a moon clock as well, have I?
So a moon clock that allows you to track where you are.
Oh, I like
So you can
them.
get these moon clocks from a lady called Samgina Moon, and she sells these clocks, and they're great. And the reason for doing it, I must say, is that it's actually, it gives yourself a break. So it allows you to drop in the power and to recognize where you are. But when you have a day like that, Rachel, when you said, I've had 3 arguments, it's not that you're blaming the moon, but you can go, give yourself a break, love, because where you are at the moment, you're being affected. It's grounding. You're saying, I'm not a bad person. I'm just feeling a bit wobbly right now. Yes. It's like looking on your weather app and going, oh, it's going to rain today. I must take my umbrella. That's what it allows you to do. It's like, oh, my period's about to start and it's a full moon. Maybe I won't start that delicate conversation about money with my husband. That leave that for another day, because it's all going to go. It has potential of being a little bit stormy. So it allows us to give ourselves a break. It allows us to understand that we are emotional beings and we go up and down, and we choose to pick our battles on better days.
But I love the fact that, having missed out on all this knowledge while I still had a menstrual cycle, because I was a bit slow on the uptake, now I get the chance to explore it and experiment with the moon.
Do it through the moon. Yeah, so this is what I'm doing. So that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna miss my period because I don't have that bodily check. Suddenly the period arrives, I go, oh, that's why I've been a moody old cow for the last few days.
Yes, but you won't be a moody old cow. That's the thing. You will be
more balanced.
Much more balanced, and that is what I love. And also, anybody that's saying women are all over the place because their menstrual cycle, well, guess what? When we're postmenopausal, we're not anymore. No. We're actually hormonally much more at parity with men in terms of consistency, perhaps, than we were before. So, all the more reason for us to step up, step forward, start changing the world, and not, stepping back.
Yeah. Yes. Watch out, world.
Exactly. Exactly. So what final wisdom would you like to share with my listeners?
Oh my goodness me, you've asked such great questions here today. I can't believe the breadth of topics you've had me talking.
We've gone on a long time, actually. This is a long podcast, so guys, I'm sorry this is a bit longer than usual, but I thought this is all good. Can't cut her off. Gotta let her go.
Final words of wisdom. Goodness me. Embrace your midlife. There's some really crappy times. There are some really crappy times. There's shifts, this transition that we feel hormonally, but also as well, kids leaving home, career shifts. There's lots of things that happen in our 40s and 50s. And yeah, there are some really crappy moments. But there's also some incredibly beautiful, incredibly opportunistic ways of looking about how we can make an impact. And don't let the crappiness overshadow those opportunities of recognizing where we have the ability to step up, speak up, make a difference, because that's where I'm feeling my power is now. I've come into my 50s, is like, watch out, world. When you get a woman who doesn't really care as much, and I say that as much because I still care a little bit, but doesn't care as much as what people think of her as she did in her 20s and 30s, and cares a lot about certain things that you're going to make a difference. That's where you can really go and rattle some cages and make some change. So see through the crappiness of it all and find those moments where you can step up and speak up and make the change that is more than within you, because this is it. Watch out, midlife women. We have the potential to change the world for the better.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe or follow, share it, and I'd love a 5-star review. It really helps other listeners find the podcast. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you can access one-to-one mentoring with me, my membership program, and other resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.